Good morning, y'all. Today is as good a day as any to be a 2-video day. So in this video, we're going to be talking about the Debbie Collier case. So this is a case I haven't talked about in a while, but there's been an update. So I'm going to talk about that, and then later over on Michelle After Dark, there is going to be another video, and that is going to be on the Alex Murdoch trial. So look out for that later today. Now, what has set people talking about the Debbie Collier case? Because it was solved, wasn't it? It was solved back in November when autopsy results came out, and it was concluded that her manner of death was suicide, no crime. However, the New York Post has put in a request for the full autopsy report, and they've got it, and it's very interesting. Now, I haven't seen the full autopsy report. If anybody has it and would like to share it with me, I would be very, very grateful, because I like to review autopsy reports for myself. I do have a playlist over on Michelle After Dark, actually, all about autopsy results. So go and check that out if you haven't seen it. So if you do have the full autopsy report, then I would be very, very grateful. So what I'm going to quote you today is what the New York Post has said. So if you need a quick recap of this case, because it's been a while, then let's do that first before we get into what the New York Post has revealed and what a famed pathologist has said in his opinion. So, Debbie Collier was the mother of 2 grown-up children, Amanda and Jeffrey, and she lived in a quaint little house. It's kind of cute, which is in Athens, Georgia. So she was reported missing on September the 10th after she sent her daughter Amanda, who'd recently moved back to Georgia just 2 days before, from Maryland. She sent Amanda a Venmo payment of $2,385 with a chilling message saying, "They're not going to let me go. Love you." She was found dead in a ravine in a wooded area about an hour away from her home. The police opened a murder investigation, and the one and only press conference that they had about this case, they were very clear that they believed this was a murder investigation. However, they didn't name any suspects. I think they had persons of interest. I think Amanda and her partner Andrew Geigrich were both persons of interest, like reading between the lines. But it was in November when the autopsy report came out, and the report said manner of death was suicide, but her cause of death was narrated as inhalation of superheated gases, thermal injuries, and a hydrocodone intoxication. Now, Debbie suffered from a back injury, and she did take painkillers like hydrocodone as prescribed by her doctor. But what has come out in the New York Post is not what the police and the media initially described. The police said that Debbie had charring to her stomach, which leads you to believe that she was only burnt in one area of her body. The autopsy revealed that 80% of her total body surface had been burnt. These are horrendous 2nd and 3rd degree burns. And I'll quote here from the report, as stated by the New York Post. Autopsy examination revealed thermal injuries to the external body surface and of the tracheal mucosa. So the trachea is your windpipe. So there was burning internally in her windpipe. So she was still breathing when that fire was raging. However, there was no deposits of soot in the airways and no significant elevation of blood carboxyhemoglobin. There was no other significant injuries noted. So the death was due to these extensive burns. Awful. Now, the remnants of a fire were found, and Debbie had been seen on CCTV at a Family Dollar store buying some unusual items. And these findings kind of make sense of what the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, wrote in November. They said these findings may be due to a sudden, intense flash fire, as well as the outdoor environment of the fire. And officers had noted that a melted gas can was found near the burn site where the remnants of the fire were found. The GBI did not explain any other circumstances involving her death. What possessed her to buy some unusual items, we'll never know. There was no note left. Amanda Bearden, in a podcast with her cousin and her cousin's partner, it's called Crime on the Record, Amanda had noted that Debbie had been sad and she'd been giving things away, which, yeah, it can indicate suicidal tendencies. But Amanda, she wasn't a very good witness. She changed her story. And yeah, I can understand why a lot of people at the time thought Amanda and Andrew were in some way involved in what happened. Certainly when the police were investigating this as a murder, they did look suspicious. But the medical examiner said Collier was discovered with third-degree burns to her face, charred portions of her scalp, and charred leathery skin throughout her body. But the autopsy report doesn't explain how the death was ruled a suicide beyond a quick line that states, investigation by law enforcement reveals circumstances consistent with a self-intentioned act, and she was alone at the time of the incident. And she was found some distance away from that remnants of the fire, and she was naked and gripping the base of a small tree. Very bizarre circumstances. So had she gone there to kill herself in a quiet location away from her home, she'd taken some pills and she lit a fire and just thought she was going to drift away? Or did she intend to burn herself to death? It's an unusual way to end your life, I have to say. But also, there was never any explanation about that Venmo message, which is another reason why this case was so bizarre. You know, why did she go to that spot particularly? Why had she gone to a Family Dollar store over an hour away from her home, bought a poncho, a refillable torchlighter, paper towels, a tarp, and a tote bag to put it all in? It's just odd, isn't it? And then a neighbour told the New York Post in September that she'd heard a commotion coming from the Collier home the night before she vanished. And the family frequently engaged in screaming and fighting. Suspicious circumstances. Now, was this fighting? Was that making Debbie depressed? Was she suicidal? Did she take a very unusual way to check out? Or, as I said, did she intend to take pills, sit by a fire and drift away? And it just all went wrong. But why was she naked? Now, there was remnants of clothing on her lower half. And I speculated at the time when it was ruled a suicide that maybe her top, she was wearing a Georgia Bulldogs top, and it was quite baggy, and maybe that caught fire and she whipped it off. Now, there was remnants of a red material in the fire. Was that the top? But a famed pathologist, Dr. Baden, revealed to the New York Post that Debbie Collier's autopsy doesn't scream suicide to him, it screams murder. So Dr. Michael Baden, who is a former New York City chief medical examiner, said that Debbie's autopsy raises significant questions about how law enforcement came to believe that she died by suicide, namely because the report notes that she didn't inhale any soot or carbon monoxide. And he was quoted by the New York Post on Tuesday saying, from a forensic point of view, that would indicate that she was dead before the fire started. I don't know about that, you know. Because of the burning in her trachea, it leads me to believe she took at least one breath before she died. How would there be burning in her windpipe if she hadn't have took a breath? If this was a sudden flash fire and she whipped her top off but she was already on fire, maybe there wouldn't be soot. I don't know. And Baden went on to say it would have to be severely windy to blow away any carbon monoxide, which is unlikely given the densely wooded area of rural Habersham County where she was found. I think the medical examiner doesn't understand what forensic pathology is, he quipped to the New York Post. And while Baden said the levels of hydrocodone in Debbie's system were higher than a therapeutic dose, it's impossible to tell what her tolerance for the drug was, given that she'd been prescribed the medication for a prolonged period of time because of her back injury. Citing her toxicology report, Baden said that about a little less than half of people would die from those levels. So it means that more than half wouldn't die, but we don't know. We don't know about Debbie's physiology. We don't know how she responded to the pills. But if she did die of an overdose, the question is how the fire started. I think she started the fire, took the pills, and it all went wrong. I don't know, though. There's just some really weird things. And he said that her cause of death should be labelled hydrocodone overdose with post-mortem fire injuries. I don't know that she was dead. I don't know. I think she took at least one breath, but it makes it more confusing, he said, of the toxicology report. And the fact that she was apparently found naked makes him further question the suicide conclusion. You usually need clothing to set yourself on fire, he said. I think she started that fire and her clothes set on fire. And I think she whipped them off and that was it. She was already on fire. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I've been Michelle. Hope you're well. I'll see you in the next video. It's goodbye from Miss Tillington and Miss Cassie Springer. Bye, guys.